Jo Smith. I'm the EDD program director, and I've been at the university for about 1.5 years now. This is a role that I had back home in the US at the University of Oregon. So I'm really excited to see all of the interested EDD applicants. And I know you want to hear from Helen and Eleanor. So just a brief introduction from you two.
Sorry. Kia ora, I'm Helen Dixon. I'm an associate professor in the School of Learning, Development and Professional Practice. In terms of my teaching and my research, both are focused on assessment and or self-regulated learning. They're areas of my interest and passion. So that's why, along with Eleanor, we thought this would be a great topic to offer for an EDD cohort focused program. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Helen.
Kia ora, I'm Eleanor, and what Helen said, I echo that exactly. I'm an associate professor like she is, and assessment and self-regulation are my areas of interest, teaching, research and passion.
Great, thanks, Eleanor. And the other person who will be very important in this journey is Lee Beaver, so I'll let her quickly introduce herself.
Kia ora, I'm Lee Beaver and I'm the faculty doctoral coordinator, and you're very welcome to contact me at any time if you want to find out information about applying for the program or any of the other regulations. And I think that my email address will be posted up later on. Is that correct, Jo?
Yep, I think so. Yep.
Great,
yep.
Thank you.
Great. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share, which means we probably won't be able to see each other very much, but hopefully you can see the slides with the content. So as we're going through our information to you, we would really appreciate, I know you've all RSVP'd and put some of this information in your RSVPs, but we would also love to have a record of who has attended. So in the chat, if you can enter your name, either the school that you currently work at or other organization if you're not at a school, what your current role is professionally, and the best email to contact you, just so we have another source of information about you all. I will talk briefly about the program, and then Helen and Eleanor will give you some specifics about the cohort that they are leading. And then we'll answer some questions, some of which people were good enough to write in advance, and any others that come up as we're talking. And then we'll end with thoughts from one of our own EDD program graduates. And I should say that Helen is also an EDD program graduate, as is our Dean, Mark Barrow. So you're in good company if you're thinking about joining the EDD. But let me just turn to what this program is. So anything that's at a glance will not be everything you need to know, but hopefully it's some of the key points. And some of the questions that came in when people RSVP'd were around what is an EDD versus a PhD. And so that seems like a good place to start with this box in the middle here, that the EDD is a doctorate, and it's a doctorate aimed at professionals. And so really what we're looking for as compared to the PhD, which is independent research by people who may intend to be researchers or academics. The EDD is for people who are looking to be practitioner experts and leaders in some sense of education. It doesn't have to be a school leader. It can be a leader in curriculum design, or in the case of Helen and Mark, leaders in tertiary education. But it focuses on developing knowledge and research, scholarship in educational practice. So the sorts of thesis topics that we'll talk about in a bit are intended to really break new ground and explore some of the hot topics that are currently challenges in schools, in education broadly. So that's what the EDD is. And for our EDD, we start with 2 years of part-time coursework with the cohort. And then at that point, you present your thesis through a confirmation seminar, and you can then choose to do your thesis work as 2 years full-time or 4 years part-time. We start off with this cohort-based model for the coursework, all under this umbrella of assessment and self-regulated learning, which Eleanor and Helen will speak to in a minute. And that is intentionally to align your interests with the expertise that Eleanor and Helen and other staff bring to those 2 years of part-time coursework. So that coursework results in a thesis proposal to study a problem of practice under that broad umbrella. That's your independent thesis project. Entry requirements was also something that a lot of people asked about in the RSVPs. And so the way we calculate this depends on where you did your master's, but we at Auckland have a grade point equivalent where we transfer any other sorts of grade point averages into an equivalency, and you have to have at least a 6.0, which is what we would consider a B+ average from your master's. Also, as a degree for professionals, we're looking for you to have some experience in schools or as an educator or as a health educator or someone who can come to this program with some knowledge based on practice, not straight from bachelor's to master's to now EDD. And part of that is so that you will have a topic that's meaningful. In addition to that professional experience, your master's needs to have had a research component, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. And then, as with any degree from the university, you need to show English proficiency. So part of the process of applying will be checking in with Lee about the different documents that you need to submit. So those include academic transcripts, a statement of research intent, which is at this point usually fairly broad, but it's to give us enough of an idea to say, yes, you fit with this cohort theme, or no, you really need to tweak this and think how this topic that you're interested in might fit under our theme. And again, I'll let Helen and Eleanor speak to that a bit more. Then a CV and some referee reports. So I've got, as Lee said, her email there in the middle, and Helen's and mine as well. So I'm seeing some questions maybe in the chat. Okay, nope, it's just people doing what I asked and putting in their email and their current position. Great. So let me turn it over to Helen and Eleanor.
Right. As Joe said, the EDD is focused on a problem of practice. And so what we're aiming to do is to look at two areas that are probably close to a lot of people's hearts in terms of a practice context, assessment, and or self-regulated learning. So, and what makes the EDD different from the doing a PhD, not only, as Joe said, about the about a stronger focus on practice, but also this is offered as a cohort. So when you do a PhD, typically that's done in an individual manner, where in the EDD, as we have constructed it, you start off with that cohort. And I want you to think of the overall EDD as being done in two parts. There's Part A and Part B. Now I'll talk to Part A first, thinking of at the end of each of these parts, you will produce an outcome as a result of your study. At the end of Part A, you will have a full proposal that you will use as the basis for your research project. That is the focus of Part A. At the end of Part B, you will have a thesis, a completed thesis that will have drawn on parts of the work that you completed in Part A, but there are two separate parts in terms of how you will work. So Part A, there is both a taught and a supervisory component. So in the taught component of the EDD, you will come together as a group of people, and it will be on a Friday evening or on a Saturday, and I'll go over that a bit in the next slide. And Eleanor and I will be the teachers on that course, but we'll also be having other people that come in, such as Professor Gavin Brown and some other people within the school who have particular methodological areas of expertise. So you will work with us in Part A, you will work with us very closely. But also during that time, we'll be identifying supervisors with you. Now, those supervisors, we don't want you to find the supervisor prior to your enrolment in the EDD, because part of the focus and the work during Part A is to really refine your thinking in terms of a topic that you might like to do. And then really it's important that you choose supervisors who have knowledge and expertise in that topic, and also choosing a supervisor who has methodological expertise in terms of what you might like to do. So as I say, during that time, you can only enroll on a part-time basis. So it's really 4 semesters over the two years. Then in Part B, which looks much more like what you might think someone who is doing a PhD is doing. So the taught component has gone, and you will just work with your supervisors during Part B to get your to gather your data, to analyse your data, to write up your thesis, all of those things that you do to get that end product, which is your thesis document that you would submit for examination. So there are 2 parts, Part A, which has the taught and the supervisory, and Part B, which is supervisory only. So if we go on to the next slide, and so, as I say, there will be there are 4 blocks of study, 2 from July and November, 2 within the block July to November, 2 blocks of studies in March and June, 2 in the next block and 2 in the next block of study. Thanks, Joe. So, and these would be to accommodate practitioners. These blocks of study, where the taught component will be doing something on a Friday afternoon, probably from 4:30 till 6:30, and something on a Saturday, say from 9:30 till 2:30, to try and accommodate your work with moving into the EDD. Now, we are offering, because I know this is one of the questions, we are offering those times, and we'll be firming up the dates very shortly, only face-to-face. They are not available online. So just to make that clear to people, we would expect people to attend those sessions face-to-face. So can you go back to the first? So, and during those 4 blocks of study, remember I said that there is a piece of work that a piece of work that you'll have to produce at the end of part A, and that is your research proposal. And during each of these blocks, we'll be working on an aspect of that research proposal to get you prepared and to get you focused and make decisions about different aspects of your research. So during the first block of study that starts in July this year, really it's identifying your area of interest, accessing and identifying the literature, scoping the literature to find out actually what it is that is of interest to you and why that is important, and also to make sure that you're addressing a gap in the literature, because of course at doctoral level you're not replicating somebody else's research, you're generating new research and new ideas. So we would be helping you during that time to do all of those things. Now, in the second block of study, and I see that there's a mistake here, so what you would be doing in the second block of study is to be looking at research methodologies so that you are aware of the different research methodologies, their strengths and weaknesses, and choosing something that will enable you to help you to answer your research questions, because that's really important. There are different methods that are better suited for different types of research, different foci of research. So we would be working with you at that time to look at that, and to probably look at also what theoretical frameworks will you be using at that time. So that's in your first year. So then if we go on to the second year, then we would be looking at different ways that you might analyse data, because again, that's important, something that students find challenging. And so that would be the focus on that block. We'd be looking at ethics and research and what ethical considerations. And then in the final block, it would be all about preparing for your confirmation seminar. So at the end of that time, you will have your research portfolio, which is about 10 to 12,000 words, and you do a public presentation to your peers and to an external examiner, presenting your proposed research. So that is in your first, and that's the structure of the first 2 years. And as I say, in the subsequent years, that's when you'll be actually undertaking your research. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the sort of potential topics and areas that you might be dealing with. Assessment and self-regulated learning are pretty broad areas, and they will be the focus. We won't be going outside of those areas. So you'll have to think of something that can be contained within it. The context for study can be in whichever field where there's a strong educational focus to practice. It might be in higher education, in early childhood. It might be in the health sector, in a university, in a secondary school, but somewhere where there is an educational focus to the practice. Now, there are a huge range of topics, and I've only listed a few of them there. You might look at, for example, exemplars and rubrics in higher education. This is fast taking off as a key area in the literature at the moment, as is the area of feedback literacy, which is linked to it. And particularly, as I said, in higher education. You might look at assessment documentation in early childhood, or the co-regulation of learning in the early years. Self-monitoring is another area that there is scope and room for new work, because what you're looking at doing when you do your study is you have to contribute to the field in some way, something that's new. So you won't be replicating what other people have been doing. You'll be coming up with questions and studies that will contribute to the wider field. So self-monitoring in terms of how students do this is also an area that has some potential. So there are a whole range of topics that, as I said, that we could list up here. We could look at self-efficacy in terms of beginning years at secondary school, the self-efficacy of students in mathematics in a particular curriculum area. And these investigations that you undertake can be either empirically based or theoretical in nature. And we'll be looking at a range of methods and approaches to data collection and methodologies, and we'll be taking you through all of that process as part of the taught program. We'll be helping you define, identify your area, develop your questions, and look at how you're going to undertake those. So I'll leave it at that, Jo, I think.
Great, thank you, Eleanor and Helen. Lee has about 10 more minutes until she needs to leave, and some of the questions that came in when people RSVP'd were Lee type of questions. So I was going to turn it over to her. Lee, do you want me to read out the questions, or do you have them in front of you? Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Mm-hmm. So I think the first one, Jo, is really you.
Difference between Doctor of Philosophy and Doctor of Education.
I think we got it.
Yep, I think we covered that one pretty well. Yep. So I had actually deleted that one.
Yep. Okay. So for the second one about what happens if someone doesn't meet the B+ average. Well, the only other way that you could be considered is if you'd had any other publications or research that could be assessed, because you do have to have a research component in your qualifying master's degree, or as I just said, with publications. So that's the only way that you could be considered if you didn't have a B+ average in what you've got. But you also have to bear in mind that the university requires for doctoral study that you've got to have an overall average of B+ or higher anyway, which is the equivalent of H21 honours at the university. So it's there's not many places that you can go to get other consideration for that. So you really do have to have, it can only be the thesis, or it can be publications that could be assessed. So is there any more you want me to add for that, Jo?
No, that's great.
Okay. So the next one was the cost of the program, and someone had said they wondered why the fees for the PhD were so different. The fees for the PhD on the website are for 120 points full time, and the fees for the Doctor of Education are part-time. So if you look at them and halve the PhD, you'd have the same cost as the part-time EDD. So the fees for 2021 for the EDD part-time 60 points, and that will go from July 2021 to July or end of June 2022. So it would be a calendar year. The fees are $364.80 plus the student services fee, which is all programs in the university have a student services fee. So the total cost would be $4,146 for that first year of your program. That is the 2021 fees. So that, and if you were doing a PhD part-time, you would pay the same fee because you'd be doing 60 points as well.
Great.
All right. So what have we got else? Have we got the next one was about international students. Well, international students aren't eligible to apply for the Doctor of Education. International students have to be studying full-time, and we only offer the Doctor of Education part-time. And also, as Helen said, it's a face-to-face program, and we don't have any, there's no opportunity for any remote learning with the Doctor of Education. Scholarships. When you made an offer for the program, you're made an offer on the GPA that you have. And if you're awarded a doctoral scholarship, you won't be able to pick that scholarship up until you start the research component in the third year. And you would also have to get the scholarship, you would have to change your study from part-time to full-time. That's a requirement for PhD study as well. You have to be a full-time student to take up a scholarship. So please stop me, Joe, Helen, and Eleanor, if there's something else to add. There's another question here about the qualifications. Well, international qualifications for an applicant, if you're a domestic student and your qualifications were obtained internationally, we can't assess those at faculty level. They have to be assessed by the doctoral admissions team, who are very experienced with looking at the equivalence of an international qualification with a New Zealand qualification. So that would only be assessed after you have submitted an application for the program. Now, I think we've probably covered all the ones that I need to know, cover here. The rest would look like they're for Helen and Eleanor.
Mm-hmm. So if I pick up on the next question, I'm interested in the topic of retention and success in the VET sector. Would this fit in self-regulated learning? Yes, it could, as long as you have self-regulated learning as your theoretical frame, because you could look at retention and success and how students who stay in a program and are successful, what sort of self-regulated strategies do they apply to help them be successful within a program. So yes, that's possible, but you would have to it's fine to look at retention and success, but it would have to be in relation to self-regulated learning. Would you agree with that, Eleanor?
Yes, I'd written a little note there. If you reworked sort of the question so that it was something to do with self-regulation and self-efficacy in the VET context, then it would probably link into, yes, retention and success.
So in terms of the time commitments, so generally as a working rule, the university would say that if you're working part-time on a PhD or an EDD, you should be looking at putting in 20 hours a week across the week. full-time is 40 hours. So you just need to think about whether you would be able to allocate that amount of time. Also, there was a question about how many, you know, I think there was a question on the chat as well, or the Q&A, about how many face-to-face sessions would there be in a semester. So there would be 2 face-to-face blocks each semester. There would be one near the beginning of the semester, of course, to get you going and whatever, and one midway through. So you would have to come onto campus on a Friday and a Saturday twice during the semester. We will have Zoom meetings organised on top of those, but the face-to-face components, that's what you would be looking to commit to. Yes, and I mean, can you do it while you're working? Yes, you can. I did it while I was working full-time, and I know Beverly did it when she was working full-time, and lots of people do. But I think what you have to be quite clear about is there are other parts of your life that you have to give away. And usually that's your social life, because it is a demanding program, and the demands of the program have to be met. So I guess it's you weighing up the cost benefit before you decide to enroll.
And you probably do tend to socialise more with the people who are in the cohort. With others, you actually have a shared thing, and you do mix quite a bit together and contact each other a lot.
Thanks, Lee. I know you need to leave, but thank you for making the time. Helen and Eleanor, there was another question in the Q&A asking, I have an interest in leadership. Is there scope to cover these topics with a leadership practice lens?
Well, I guess it's the same answer as what we gave to the one about retention and recruitment. It would have to be leadership, something to do with leadership as it pertains to either assessment or self-regulated learning.
One of our master's students just has been looking at collective self-efficacy in a school. So that would be looking at an area, within the leadership context. So you would have to look at, probably pick up an area that's related to self-regulation or perhaps assessment, and look at it in terms of the leadership context.
I've seen another question in the chat about international students, and I think the clarification is, if you now live in New Zealand, if you're like, I'm from the US, but I now live here. So if you now live in New Zealand, depending on the requirements of your particular visa, you may be able to do the EDD. One of the sticking points I know has been that often international student visas require full-time study, and the first 2 years are part-time. So I'm not sure, I can't see the name there. Shamala, who asked the question. So, but again, it would depend on what the specifications of your visa are. If you're not currently in New Zealand, I don't think you are eligible, because they're not letting in any new international students for, I think, another year or so. So if you're here already, then it will maybe depend on your particular circumstance. But in general, the issue about it being part-time is where it ends up being for domestic students only.
And the question about leadership in the IB curriculum, that wouldn't fit in with our focus.
Good point. And so I think, again, Typically, the path for international students is the PhD because that's a full-time program and that's open to whatever topic you're interested in, as long as you meet the requirements and find supervisors to work with you. But the EDD does tend to be for domestic students for the reason of it being part-time for those first 2 years, and the fact that it's face-to-face for those Friday, Saturday sessions means that the current cohort that just started in March does have students who aren't Auckland based, but they're able to come in for those in-person sessions. And so I think there was a question from someone in Hamilton. That's certainly not beyond the scope of being able to come twice a semester. So I think some of those individual circumstances, you can certainly run things by me, by Lee. Lee is definitely the person to go to about particular admissions questions, about what counts for a research component for a thesis and what you need to do to compile your materials. Helen and Eleanor are great people to run potential topics by before you fill out that statement of initial research interest, to make sure that they see how it's linked with the cohort topic. Was there another question in the chat?
I saw May has asked, am I right in thinking there is scope to research assessment and self-regulation of learning through a Maori Pacifica cultural lens? Yes, that would be fine. But keeping on, just like, I think that applies to a whole lot of things. Your context could be Maori or Pacifica, or it could be in a VET program, but it could be in terms of leadership, but it has to relate to assessment and or self-regulated learning. And I think if you keep that in your mind, that's, that will help you decide. If you don't want to do something about assessment and self-regulation, well, this cohort won't be for you.
But also bear in mind that assessment and self-regulation are huge areas. And you wouldn't be just looking at the whole of any of those areas.
No.
Like on that slide that I showed before, you'd be picking out an aspect such as goal setting, or such as the use of exemplars, or documentation and assessment, or things like, or feedback and assessment, rather than trying to take on the whole world. Oops.
So I expect Dr. Booth momentarily, but before she jumps on, are there other questions? It sounded like we can allow you to talk if you raise your hand, or the chat box or the Q&A are also good places to put questions. Let me check. So in my master's, I wrote about learner agency, and I'd like to continue studying this topic. Do you want to answer the question in the Q&A while Eleanor does it? It's about learner agency and whether that's close enough to self-regulation.
Yes, in a question, in a word, yes. That's okay. Yeah. Now, Angelina Ng, are we exploring relevance of online assessment? If that was something that somebody was interested in, yes. It doesn't, is self-regulated learning similar to autonomous learning? Sort of, but...
No, not really.
Oh, do you not think so?
Well, no. No, self-regulated learning is a field of its own. It's recognised, yeah.
But online assessment as a topic.
Yes, that would be fine.
Yeah.
That would have to be, like a lot of the things, they've got to be set in a broader context of assessment. But if somebody is interested in investigating online assessment, whatever that may be, yes, that would be very suitable. Yeah.
Well, while we wait for Beverly, let me put Helen on the spot. Why did you decide to do an EDD when you did?
You're not putting me on the spot because I answered this question to somebody yesterday. So when I finished my master's, I said I was never going to do any study ever again. And then a couple of years later, I decided I would do a doctorate. And at that point in time, I was at the faculty, and a number of my colleagues had enrolled in PhDs, which were quite different in those days from what they are now. And so I decided that they were getting nowhere. They were, enrolled and never got anything done because they were busy doing other things. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. So at the point in time when we had the presentation just like this, though it was face-to-face, of course, in those days, the program was structured just like similar to what we've just explained. And I thought, yes, this is for me because I like the structure. I like to think, I've got a set date for getting this bit done. I've got a set date for getting this bit done. I've got a set date, and that really motivates me to prioritise my study, not to keep dropping it off. So that was one reason. And my second reason was I like working collaboratively. So I found a great deal of benefit by thinking I can learn not only from the cohort people, but from my peers. So anyway, hello, Beverly.
Hello, sorry about that. We've just had a big problem. This is the third device I've tried.
Well, we can hear and see you very well, so I'm glad you persevered. So let me just welcome you. Dr. Beverly Booth is principal at Devonport Primary School, and really excited to have you here to talk to. We've lost some over the 45 minutes, but we still have 21 people who are interested in the EDD path. So tell us how you ended up on the path of getting your doctorate.
Well, yeah, I guess when I came to New Zealand, I really wanted to do more study, and I didn't know anything about New Zealand when I immigrated, so it was a good way to get to know and also to kind of find my assessment people. So that was a great thing to be involved with the university. But I liked the thought of doing the EDD because of being part of a cohort for the first 2 years, because I wanted to meet people and kind of get to know people. And also my master's had been an action research approach, and so it appealed to me that the EDD seemed to be offering me those things, plus working full-time as well. At the end of the first 2 years part-time, I'd actually written a lot of things, and I'd done, I'd actually kind of felt I was on the journey with other people. So yeah, that's why I finished up doing that.
And when you went into the program, were you in a position at the school where you thought, in order to advance, I need an EDD, or had you come from a different profession altogether? Just give us a little bit more of a sense of how the EDD propelled you to your current position.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be fair, it probably didn't. I'd been a principal, a head teacher in England, and I'd also done some work at Manchester Metropolitan University as well, so lecturing there after I did my master's. So, but really it was about understanding more about assessment in New Zealand and the things that I was passionate about. So when I came to New Zealand, I was actually teaching, not in a senior management role. So it was it felt like the right thing to do to get me kind of on that path and really understanding what New Zealand was all about, because it is different. But,
Sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things that people have asked is about the ability to add being a student as you're still working. So talk a little bit about that juggling act and how you survived.
So my husband's making gestures in the background there. I think he's saying that I either went mad or I was crazy. I don't know what he's doing, but he's saying I didn't, I think. Yeah, I suppose at different times there were different ways of approaching things. In those first 2 years, it was just finding the time to be allowed to be out of school at that point. Further into things, just having make sure that I had the time to like go out to do things and negotiating that in school. But eventually I had a year where I just worked 4 days a week. And then once I was in the final stages, the board were actually really good and enabled me to have some time where I worked from home each week, and they checked in on me as well. So there we had a standing agenda on our in committee where I reported back about how I was going with everything and whether I'd actually taken that time, which was good because it just showed they expected that I would do, and I didn't have to feel guilty about it. I also asked the children in school in the final year, I told them that I wasn't a very good student, that I found I put things off, and that would they please just keep me on track and remind me that I needed to do my work. And 2 of them actually asked me every day for a year, have you done your homework, Mrs. Booth? So yeah. But I suppose it's about being flexible, really, and just keeping people informed at school about how things are going for you, and just seeing whether you can negotiate those times off. Just recognizing that it is actually it's a big thing to do. You can feel quite torn, really, between wanting to rest and thinking you should be working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So give us the elevator pitch of what your study was about, and was it qualitative or quantitative? What sorts of methods did you use?
Yeah, it was qualitative. So it was. So I mean, you've got to remember now that I've been back for a year running a school without doing anything academic at all. So all that kind of academic talk might be lost a little bit in thinking about what the approaches were actually called. So I'm kind of put on the spot here about using that academic language that I became so good at when I was writing, but maybe not in my real life. But basically I went into schools and into classrooms and observed what was going on, and then I used a series of interviews as well with teachers and with children. So that was my approach to how I got the kind of data there. And then, I mean, Helen's there as one of my supervisors. She could be shaking her head here.
Well, let me ask a slightly different question then. Let me ask a slightly different question. What are you most proud of, and what was the most challenging?
Well, I'm most proud that I actually finished it. And I am most proud, I guess, that it is such a relevant topic, and that that as well and this is the thing about researching and doing the EDD, that it was very applicable to what I do in school. So I live it every day with people in school as well. So that it has got relevance, and it is important. So I'm proud of that. And most challenging, I guess, it is back to just focusing and getting on and organising yourself and actually doing it. So yeah, I'm probably proud that I actually managed to do it, because I'm not very good at doing those things, really, especially when other things take over in your life at work and so on. Yeah.
Helen said before you came on that you may have to let other things go, and some of that may be the social side of your life, and you may have a period of time where you aren't able to spend Sunday with a friend, or doing something completely for yourself, or picking up a new hobby. It's probably not a time to learn how to ski or, or something. It's probably a time when you have to balance the commitments you already have. But at the end, you are called doctor, and you've learned skills and knowledge that you can apply in your professional setting. So that's the outcome. Good.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Can I just say something? Because
Yep.
I think Beverly's hiding a light under a bushel. That Beverly did 2 articles, journal articles, and a book chapter, and so the knowledge that she brought to the field for practicing teachers has been so valuable, and being able to share it not only with her school but with the wider educational community has been really beneficial. Yeah.
Can you remind us, because Beverly, you never told us what the topic was.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the topic was assessment capability, and I looked at how really what assessment capable teachers do in order to create assessment capable students who have agency in the classroom. And so I looked at the conditions that, or what I actually defined what that would be, and then looked at what the teachers actually did and the impact on the students, and then looked at the teachers' professional life histories to see what it was that had enabled them to become assessment capable professionals. So that was what it was all about.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've been checking the chat and the Q&A. We do have a couple of minutes if you want to ask Beverly anything. Otherwise, I do see a question that's probably back for Eleanor or Helen about using participants from within the school that you're teaching or leading in. What's your response to that? Self-study. Yep.
It's very challenging and difficult in terms of getting ethical approval. However, I did that. I did my doctoral work. It wasn't an EDD, but I did my PhD looking at assessment within my own institution, which was then the Auckland College of Education. But it is very difficult. It can be done, but it is a lot more challenging to do it within your own place of work compared to doing it in others. Helen, would you agree? Or
Yes, I think while we would say that practitioner inquiry is a good thing, from an ethics point of view, which we have no control over, they don't really like people investigating their own settings. I know when Beverly did her work, even though she was doing work within her own school, she had to get participants from outside of the school. But then you were able to, Beverly, weren't you? You were able to apply what you found out from looking at other people into your own school context as well.
Yes, I did do that, but I wasn't researching in my own school.
No.
Sometimes I tried questions out, just to see, when I was kind of refining questions, but the research wasn't based in my own school, no.
Mm.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us after your work day. I know it's probably not the way that you like to relax at the end of the day, but really appreciate your time and thoughts, and for everyone who is considering the program. It's good to hear from someone who survived, not just those of us who are the academics involved. So thank you for coming. And I don't see any other questions. So the again, we've recorded, and so we'll be posting this on the webpage. And again, the advice is to really connect with Lee about questions about what you need to get together for your admissions application. Connect with Eleanor and Helen for questions about whether the topic that you're thinking of will fit how they've conceptualized assessment and self-regulated learning. And anything else, you can email me. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a good last couple minutes of daylight out the window, and good night.